There's a distinct energy that follows a woman who knows her worth. You feel it the moment she speaks. It's not arrogance, it's not coldness, it's not about having the loudest voice or the most assertive tone. It's calm, grounded, composed. She doesn't speak from a place of fear, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone. She speaks from wholeness. When a high-value woman talks to a man, she's not trying to win him. She's not calculating every sentence hoping it lands just right, afraid that the wrong word might scare him off. She's not sitting in her head trying to guess what he wants to hear, because she's already decided what she wants. She's rooted in her standards and values, and because of that, she doesn't need to force anything to happen. This doesn't mean she's never nervous. Confidence doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you don't let fear control your behavior. It means when you speak, your words are not filtered through insecurity. It means you say what you mean without needing approval stamped on the end of every sentence. Most people communicate hoping not to be judged. A high-value woman communicates knowing that judgment isn't her business. She's not trying to be for everyone. She's simply being honest, clear, and respectful. This is what's so magnetic about her energy. She's emotionally honest, yet not emotionally messy. She doesn't overshare hoping for closeness. She's not love-bombing or trauma-dumping 5 minutes into a conversation. She reveals herself gradually, with intentionality. Why? Because she understands that value isn't something you prove, it's something you reveal over time. In a conversation, a low-value mindset sounds like, "What can I say to make him like me?" But a high-value mindset sounds like, "What can I say to make him like me?" But a high-value mindset sounds like, "What can I say to make him like me?" But a high-value mindset sounds like, "What can I say to make? How can I show up as my best self and observe whether he is aligned with who I am?" That's a massive shift. Now here's where a lot of people get confused. Being confident doesn't mean being detached or uninterested. In fact, high-value communication often feels incredibly warm. It feels open, curious, real, but the key is, there's no neediness underneath it. She can be playful, she can flirt, she can engage deeply, but she's not relying on the outcome of the conversation to determine her worth. If he calls back, great. If not, she's still centered, and that makes her irresistible. Think about this. Most of the time when we communicate with someone we're attracted to, we're not actually with them, we're in our heads. We're thinking about how we sound. We're worrying whether we're being too much or not enough. We're trying to edit ourselves in real time. That kind of energy comes across as awkward, hesitant, unsure. But when you drop the performance, when you speak from your truth, even if it's imperfect, people feel that. It builds real connection. A high-value woman isn't afraid to say something vulnerable. She might admit when she's nervous or even when she's unsure about something, but she does it from a place of strength, not self-deprecation. She doesn't tear herself down for laughs. She doesn't apologize for existing. And when something feels off, she speaks up. She doesn't sit in silence hoping the other person will change. She doesn't let resentment build while smiling through it. She knows how to speak her needs in a way that is clear, kind, and direct. That might sound like, "I value consistency in communication. When I don't hear from you for days, it makes me feel like we're not on the same page." That's not a threat. It's not a complaint. It's not an accusation. It's a clear expression of value, and it sets the tone for the kind of connection she's available for. The truth is, a woman who communicates with confidence automatically filters out the wrong people, because low-effort, emotionally unavailable, or manipulative individuals don't know what to do with someone who can't be controlled by praise or attention. They'll either rise to meet her, or they'll walk, and either outcome is a win, because she doesn't need every man to choose her. She only needs the right man to recognize her. There's also something really beautiful about how she listens. She's not waiting for her turn to speak. She's not interrogating. She's not collecting evidence or testing. She listens with curiosity, not control. And when she responds, she does so with thoughtfulness. She's not reactive. She takes her time, chooses her words, and speaks with intention. Even in conflict, she doesn't lose herself. She can disagree without becoming defensive. She can stand up for herself without tearing someone else down. She's emotionally mature enough to hold space for both perspectives, even when she stands firm in her own. And that's rare, because so many people either shut down or explode. But this woman, she holds the line. She shows up with grace and grit. She knows that communication isn't just about getting your message across. It's about showing who you are. Every time she speaks, she's teaching people how to treat her. She's signaling what kind of connection she will or won't tolerate. And over time, that communication builds her reality. In a world full of noise, she becomes unforgettable, not because she shouts, not because she manipulates, not because she's overly polished or perfect, but because every word she speaks comes from a place of grounded self-worth. And that kind of communication, that changes everything. There's a quiet kind of power in a woman who knows how to set boundaries without turning everything into a fight. She doesn't yell, threaten, or beg. She doesn't guilt-trip or manipulate. She simply communicates where the line is, and then most importantly, she holds it. You can feel the difference when you're around someone like that. She's not reactive. She doesn't lose herself in the heat of the moment. She's not trying to control you, but she is crystal clear about what she will and won't accept. That clarity is what gives her energy weight. That's why people respect her, even if they don't always agree with her. Boundaries are often misunderstood. People think setting boundaries means putting up walls or pushing others away, but it's not about building barriers. It's about creating structure. It's about showing people the framework within which healthy love can exist. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's chaos. And this kind of woman knows that. When she communicates a boundary, it doesn't come from fear or insecurity. It comes from deep self-respect. She's not reacting to being hurt. She's responding from a place of alignment. That might sound like I enjoy spending time with you, but I don't continue dating people who disappear for days without communication. Simple, direct, calm, no anger, no accusations. Just a clear message. This is my standard. And when she says it, she means it. She doesn't bluff. She doesn't make empty threats. She doesn't say she's going to walk away and then stay when nothing changes. That's the key difference between someone who says they have standards and someone who actually lives by them. She understands that enforcing a boundary isn't about punishing the other person, it's about protecting her peace, and she does it even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means losing someone, even when it means sitting with loneliness for a while, because she knows temporary discomfort is worth long-term self-respect. There's something deeply attractive about this. It's not just that she's strong, it's that she's consistent. You always know where you stand with her. You never have to wonder what's okay and what isn't. She doesn't change the rules based on how much she likes someone. Her boundaries aren't based on fear of loss, they're based on love for herself. A lot of people avoid setting boundaries because they think it will scare people away. And sometimes it does. But here's the truth. The only people who get scared by boundaries are the ones who benefited from your lack of them. When this kind of woman sets a boundary, she's not trying to keep people out. She's inviting the right people in, the ones who will honor, not test her standards. And when someone responds poorly to her boundary, she sees that as information. She doesn't try to convince them. She doesn't argue. She simply lets them go. She knows her value isn't tied to someone else's reaction. And here's something else that's powerful. She doesn't over-explain. She doesn't feel the need to defend every decision she makes. She might say, "I'm not okay with that," and leave it at that. No 10-minute justification. No list of reasons. Just the truth, spoken simply. And that's often enough. This doesn't mean she's rigid or controlling. In fact, she's often deeply empathetic and understanding. But she won't bend over backward at the expense of her well-being. She's willing to compromise, but not self-abandon. And that distinction is everything. She doesn't stay silent to avoid conflict. She doesn't pretend everything's fine when it's not. If something's bothering her, she speaks up. But she does it with maturity. She's not attacking. She's inviting a better kind of connection. That might sound like when you cancel last minute. It makes me feel unimportant. I understand things come up, but I'd appreciate more notice in the future. Direct, honest, emotionally intelligent. She's not bottling it up until it explodes later. She addresses things early, cleanly, without drama. And you know what happens? The right kind of people rise to meet her. They want to show up better. Not because she demanded it, but because she inspired it. She creates a space where respect becomes the norm, not the exception. Sometimes, though, the person doesn't rise. They make excuses. They blame. They call her too much. They say she's hard to please. And that's when she makes her choice. Not out of anger, but clarity. She doesn't stay hoping they'll change. She doesn't shrink herself to make them comfortable. She lets them go. Because at the end of the day, she'd rather be alone with her standards than accompanied in their absence. That's not bitterness. That's maturity. She's not playing games. She's not trying to win someone over. She's building a life, and she knows the people in it must contribute to the peace she's created, not threaten it. She also doesn't get addicted to potential. She doesn't cling to what someone could be, if only they changed. She watches what people do, not just what they say. And when the actions don't match the words, she believes the actions. It's not always easy. Sometimes she has to walk away from someone she truly cares about. But her self-worth doesn't negotiate. Her boundaries are a reflection of her healing, of the work she's done, of the pain she's already lived through, and has no intention of repeating. She's not cold, she's clear, she's not detached, she's discerning. And in a world where so many people are afraid to speak their truth, she becomes rare, not because she's perfect, but because she's consistent. And that consistency, that earns respect. Every time she draws a line with calm strength, she teaches others how to love her better. But more importantly, she reminds herself that she's worth protecting, that her peace matters, that her love isn't up for auction, it's reserved for those who truly value it. That's not just how a high-value woman sets boundaries, that's how she builds a life worth sharing. There's something incredibly rare and incredibly magnetic about a woman who knows how to express interest without losing her dignity. She can say, "I'm interested in you," without making that interest her identity. She can let someone know she enjoys their presence, but she doesn't make their presence a requirement for her happiness. That's what it means to express desire, not desperation. Desperation seeks approval, desire seeks alignment. The truth is, many people have been conditioned to believe that showing interest is weakness. They think if you admit that you like someone, you've given away all your power. So they play games.
They wait twice as long to text back. They pretend they're busy when they're not. They avoid vulnerability like it's a disease. But a high-value woman doesn't play those games. She's not afraid to show up authentically. If she likes you, she'll let you know. Not through manipulation, not through dramatic displays of affection, but through small, sincere actions. She might say, "I've really enjoyed our time together. I'd love to keep getting to know you." That's not needy. That's real. And it carries far more power than pretending to be indifferent. The difference is that she's not handing over her self-worth with that statement. Her interest isn't a contract. She's not saying, "I like you, so now you owe me affection, commitment, or attention." She's simply inviting connection and leaving space for the other person to step into it willingly. And if they don't, she doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. She doesn't spiral into self-doubt, because she understands a fundamental truth. Wanting someone is not the same as needing them. You can want love. You can want companionship. You can even want a specific person. But when that want turns into "I won't be okay without this," it crosses the line into desperation. And that energy, no matter how well hidden, always finds a way to leak through. A high-value woman knows her life is already full. She doesn't see a man as the missing puzzle piece. She sees him as a potential addition, not a rescue. That mindset creates emotional freedom. It allows her to stay centered, even when she's deeply interested, because her interest doesn't hijack her peace. She doesn't try to perform for love. She doesn't morph into whatever she thinks the other person wants. She stays herself, fully, boldly, beautifully, because she knows that if someone doesn't want her as she is, then she's not the right fit for them, and that's not a loss. That's a filter doing its job. What's especially powerful is the way she responds when her feelings aren't reciprocated. She doesn't lash out. She doesn't shame the other person for not choosing her. She might feel the sting of rejection. She's human, but she doesn't let it dismantle her sense of self. Instead, she takes it as data, as clarity, as a necessary detour, not a dead end. She doesn't cling to someone just because they gave her temporary validation. She listens to the long-term behavior, not just the fleeting chemistry, because she knows how to tell the difference between someone who's excited by her and someone who's ready for her. And when she senses inconsistency, when someone shows interest but never follows through, she doesn't try harder to win them. She doesn't double down. She steps back, because she understands that chasing someone who's emotionally unavailable doesn't lead to love. It leads to self-betrayal. And she's done betraying herself to feel chosen. This doesn't mean she's cold or guarded. Quite the opposite. She's open. She's warm. She'll look you in the eyes and tell you what she feels. But that openness comes with discernment. She doesn't open her heart to just anyone. She opens it to people who show up with the same level of care and intention. She values herself too much to keep knocking on a locked door. She'd rather walk away in peace than beg for entry. This kind of emotional intelligence is rare. It's not something you're born with. It's something you earn, through heartbreak, through self-reflection, through learning that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. And that's the secret. She never loses herself, even in love. She doesn't confuse being emotionally available with being emotionally dependent. She can say "I miss you" without needing you to fill a void. She can say "I want you" without demanding you fix her life. She can hold space for both intimacy and individuality. When she's with someone, it's not because she can't be alone. It's because she chooses them, and that choice makes all the difference. There's no pressure, no urgency, no fear-based attachment, just connection, built on truth. She doesn't need grand declarations to feel secure. She values consistency over intensity. She pays attention to how someone shows up in everyday moments, not just the highlights, because desire that lasts is built on more than butterflies. It's built on trust, and she trusts herself first. She trusts that if something doesn't feel right, she can walk away. She trusts that if a relationship ends, she won't collapse. She trusts that expressing her feelings won't make her weak, it will make her free. Because when you express desire without attaching your identity to the outcome, you're no longer performing, you're living in truth. That's what makes her unforgettable. Not because she begged to be loved, but because she loved without begging. And in a world full of people trying to prove they're worthy, she simply knows she is. That's not just confidence, that's liberation. The way a woman speaks to a man reveals everything, not just about what she wants, but who she is. And a high-value woman, she uses her words to build bridges, not walls. She understands that communication isn't about winning or proving a point, it's about connection. And the way she speaks reflects the emotional maturity, presence, and empathy she brings into every interaction. She's not interested in surface-level exchanges or conversations filled with games, sarcasm, or manipulation. She wants real connection, so she communicates with intention. Her words are thoughtful, grounded, and honest. She doesn't talk at people, she talks with them. That difference matters. When she speaks, she's not performing, impressing, or testing. She's inviting. Her tone is warm, her questions are curious, and her focus is present. She listens deeply, not just to the words being said, but to what's underneath them, because she values truth over image and depth over distraction. You'll never hear her using passive-aggressive phrases like, "I guess that's just how it is," or whatever, "do what you want," because she doesn't use language as a weapon. She uses it to create clarity. If something's on her mind, she says it. If something bothers her, she doesn't hint or hope someone notices. She speaks up with grace. Her strength is in her clarity, not her volume. Let's say a man cancels plans last minute. She doesn't send 5 angry texts or give the silent treatment. She might say, "I understand things come up, but I value follow through. Last-minute changes make me feel like I'm not a priority, and that's something I need in a relationship." No blame, no drama, just clear, confident truth. That kind of communication isn't just about expressing boundaries, it's about making it safe for someone to meet them. She gives others the chance to understand her, instead of punishing them for not already knowing. She knows that communication isn't just a tool for getting what she wants, it's a mirror for who she is, and she wants to show up as someone who's grounded, kind, and self-aware. She also chooses words that open doors instead of closing them. If she wants more attention, she doesn't say, "You never call me anymore." She might say, "I really enjoy talking to you, it means a lot when we stay connected during the week." The difference is subtle but powerful. One creates guilt, the other creates inspiration. One makes someone defensive, the other makes them want to show up more. She speaks with the intention to be understood, not to overpower. Even when she's hurt, she's mindful. She might say, "That hurt me," rather than "You're selfish," because she owns her emotions. She doesn't label someone's character based on a single action. She gives people room to grow, not fear of rejection. That kind of language builds intimacy, because it shows that you can be real with her without being judged. It creates a container of safety, a space where people feel encouraged to open up, and that's where real love lives, in that space of mutual emotional safety. She's also not afraid to say the things that matter most, the things so many people avoid out of fear of looking too invested, or catching feelings first. She'll say, "I like the way I feel when I'm around you. I admire how you handled that situation. I feel seen when we talk." She gives compliments with depth, not just flattery. She offers praise where it's earned, not as currency but as connection. Because when you see the best in someone, and speak it out loud, you make them feel alive. And that's what she does. She makes people feel more like themselves. That's not manipulation. That's presence. That's emotional generosity. She's also willing to talk through hard things. She doesn't avoid conflict, but she doesn't escalate it either. She enters tough conversations, not to prove who's right, but to understand, repair, and move forward. If she feels distance growing in the relationship, she won't bottle it up. She might say, "Lately I've been feeling like there's a disconnect between us. I care about what we're building, and I want to talk about how we can get back on the same page." That's leadership. That's vulnerability with courage. That's love in action. And it makes the other person want to match her emotional maturity. Because when someone sees how safe it feels to talk with her, they naturally rise to the occasion, not because they're afraid of her, but because they respect her. She doesn't shame, she doesn't lecture, she doesn't corner people. She speaks in a way that gives others the freedom to meet her, while making it clear that if they don't, she's strong enough to walk away. This balance between vulnerability and strength is what makes her unforgettable. Her words don't just fill silence, they mean something, and that's the difference between connection that fades and connection that lasts. In every interaction, she's building something, not just chemistry, but trust, not just fun, but foundation. And that's what makes her stand out in a world where so many are speaking just to be heard. She speaks to understand, to connect, to build, and that's a language very few speak, but once you hear it, you never forget it.